following announcement has been paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Hello, ladies. Remember me? Let me talk to you, dummies.
It's now time
It's beer time. TikTok.
It's showtime!
for the longest running wrestling talk show in history.
We are huge. It's gonna be cool.
You're where it's at.
You smell like me.
Tune in each and every week.
You better keep listening, or I'll come out of your computer
And turn it on for you.
or else I'm gonna kick your stinking teeth in.
We've been known by a few names.
The needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few.
The Interactive Interview,
Interactive interview. Oh, yeah.
Interactive interview.
The interactive interview. Interactive interview. The interactive interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio,
Interactive wrestling radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive radio.
Interactive wrestling radio.
Interactive wrestling radio.
The Blaze,
Blaze 1260 AM.
The Blaze.
The Blaze.
Blaze. The Blaze Rock.
and a lot of other names.
Weekend Warrior of Wrestling. The Pile Driver.
The Ecw Wrestling Center.
3 Count Wrestling. The Hour Slam.
But it's all one show, the Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter.
The Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter, dude.
The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And your host from day one,
By ignorance or arrogance.
James Walsh.
Wake up, sleepyheads.
Dr. Carolus.
It all starts
What a rush. Oh, Boomer Sooner.
Thank you very much.
I got 2 words for you. Thumbs down. Breaking necks and cashing checks. Bang. I've heard a lot about you guys.
Check it out. Get out of my face. You win!
But I'm desperately out of time!
So what you gonna do when Blaze-a-mania runs wild on you?
now.
Welcome back. Now our distinct honor and privilege to be joined by Mr. Eric Bischoff. Mr. Bischoff, how are you doing today?
Well, you know what? I'm doing great right now, but I'm pulling over on the side of the road so that we don't lose our cell phone connection. And I'm noticing that on Highway 10, where I'm pulling up, I'm pulling that off next to a federal prison. So all of a sudden, I got to cut out of here. You'll know why.
Chance, are you in Florence?
Actually, no. I'm not sure what the state is that I'm near here, but or what state that I'm near. But I just saw the sign that said, "Oh, no, it's Wiley's Well." And the state prison is right down the road, whatever that means.
Oh well, the only reason I ask is because we're out here in Mesa, actually Tempe, and my brother-in-law works at Florence Prison, so maybe if we wave by. Anyway, the book is out. Great book. I've read it already. It's honestly a great read. Controversy Creates Cash. First of all, how involved were you in your creative process? Did you actually sit down and write this, or did you have a co-writer along with you?
Well, no, it's really it's my story completely. I did have a co-writer by the name of Jeremy Roberts, who really took my words and my story and supplied the structure. He kind of kept me on the straight and narrow, so to speak, so that it wasn't a literary train wreck, if you will. But in terms of the content, it's 100% mine.
Okay. Now, given the fact that there's a WWE stamp on the book, how truthful were you allowed to be? Did you have any handcuffs placed on you that you can't say this, you can't say that, or is it 100% from your heart?
No, it's absolutely 100% from my heart. There was only 1 or 2 small changes that I had to make. Quite honestly, they were changes that were suggested by the WWE legal department to help protect me about things that I said that had nothing to do with WWE. So in terms of, everybody, that's a question that everybody's asking me, and I put my website up a few days ago, www.ericbischoff.com. And, and I invite people to send in questions, and one of the questions that I'm getting consistently is, did Vince McMahon allow you to tell your story? And absolutely 110%, he did not censor anything that I had to say.
Now, is this book, Controversy Creates Cash, is it your response to the years of internet know-it-alls and dirt sheet writers who have trashed you through the years?
Yes and no. It really wasn't it wasn't personal. I didn't, I've got a pretty thick skin, and I've had a pretty thick skin for a long time. I've been in this business for 20 years, and you can't be in this business without developing a thick skin. But, it all started, to be quite honest with you. One day, just out of curiosity, I Googled my name. And when I did, I saw all this stuff. There's like a million Eric Bischoff stories on the internet. And I just started looking at some of them. And one of the stops I made along the way was with this Wikipedia. And I'm looking at this biography of Eric Bischoff, which is supposedly official. And, I realized in this biography that instead of being born in May of 1955, like I'd always thought I was born in December of 1957. And I found out after looking on the internet that I actually graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in business and a minor in broadcast and television. And I didn't know that up until that moment. And it went on to, go through this entire biography of Eric Bischoff, and I realized that there's so much disinformation out there that I wanted to kind of set the record straight. So I embarked upon the book and launched the website, and decided I was going to go about busting all of the myths about Eric Bischoff and WCW. And a lot of that was perpetuated by the internet dirt sheets and, the internet fan websites and so forth. There's just so much BS out there.
If you don't mind me asking, what is your opinion on books coming out by people who never worked in WCW, never were even backstage at a WCW event, discussing the death of WCW as if they know exactly what happened?
Well, I know which book you're referring to, and quite honestly, I had my attorney look at that, and he suggested to me that it was so ridiculous that it bordered, in his opinion, on slander. And I could probably at some point pursue that if I choose to, but, it's a good point, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to kind of set the record straight, because so much of the information, and again, that author in particular, and that book in particular, relied on second, third, fourth, fifth-hand rumor, innuendo, and really lies. A lot of it is just lies. And they present it as fact. And it amazes me that they're able to sell those books. But, the wrestling fan is a very rabid consumer. They're almost obsessive compulsive. And as a culture, we see something written in print, we tend to believe it. And unfortunately for me and for the fans themselves, they've just got a lot of bad information. I mean, that book is so far off base, it's not even funny.
All right, well, I wanted to ask you about Monday Nitro. Now, people say all the time that Vince took a huge gamble with WrestleMania, and some have argued that you did the same with Monday Nitro. Was the success of Monday Nitro crucial to the survival of WCW back in '95?
Oh, I don't know that it was or wasn't. It came about, if you read about it in the book, it came about, completely out of the blue. I had been running WCW for about a year and a half. Up until that point, WCW, which Ted Turner loved the company and supported it, very strongly. But up until that point, no one that they had brought in to manage WCW had ever been able to figure out a way to turn a profit. I had turned things around, and we were so close to being profitable that I stumbled across a business opportunity, and in order to execute that opportunity, I had to go sit in front of Ted Turner because, quite frankly, that opportunity meant that I would have gone into business with Rupert Murdoch, who at that time was a corporate, mortal enemy of Ted Turner. So in that sales pitch that I had prepared for weeks or months, about 30 seconds into it, Ted interrupted me and just basically said, "Okay, Eric, what do we have to do to be competitive with the WWE?" Which I was totally.
Austin?
Gee, I know. Give me 2 hours of prime time. That'll work. Because I didn't think he'd do it, and of course he did it. And I walked out of there with a huge challenge. I think personally, if it would have been a miserable failure, it would have probably been the end of Eric Bischoff. I don't think it would have been the end of WCW, but I think my influence in that organization would have been really pretty much over. But Ted was a big supporter of WCW, and I think he would have supported it even if Nitro would have not been a success.
Given all the bosses that came before you and all the effort that you put into it, I know you traveled back and forth to Japan several times to garner deals with New Japan Pro Wrestling and bringing in all the superstars that you brought in. Given all that you did and the 24 hours a day work that you did to make WCW the success it was, how fulfilling was it to see that for the first time WCW Monday Nitro was beating WWE Raw in the ratings?
It was great. I can't lie about that. It was probably one of the highlights of my professional career, and I think it was probably because no one thought it could be done. I think that's one of the most rewarding things for me is to accomplish goals that no one, and even in some cases myself, I had serious doubts as to whether or not I was ever going to be able to. Forget about beating WWE.
Mm-hmm.
All I wanted to do was be respectably competitive. But, when we turned the tide and we started really, soundly defeating them consistently week in and week out, it was an amazing period of my life. And it was great. It's just like going out and winning the Super Bowl every weekend if you were a professional football player.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in '96, the NWO changed wrestling forever. Looking back, though, do you think that it may have watered down the NWO a little bit, having so many members?
That's a very good question, and yeah, in retrospect, there's no doubt that that's the case. We certainly didn't see it coming. We talked a lot about it. You got to remember, we had so much success with the NWO, and really the strategy. And one of the reasons that we kept adding so many members was because the goal was originally to split into two companies, much like SmackDown and Raw has done. Our goal was to create two separate brands, the NWO brand and the WCW brand. So one of the reasons that we kept adding members is so that we could eventually have enough of a roster, if you will, under that NWO umbrella that we could literally have two distinct brands.
Well, speaking of the NWO, a lot of the WCW's best ideas and gimmicks have showed up in the WWE in recent years. NWO, Goldberg, and Scott Steiner, but they don't seem to do very well. Does it bother you that these great creations kind of were misused in the WWE?
I don't know that they were misused. I think that's not fair to say. Clearly, they weren't successful, but in a way, it's a little bit of a compliment. And, the fact that no one in that, and don't get me wrong, I really respect a lot of the people that I work with in WWE. In fact, there's no one that I work with that I don't have a tremendous amount of respect for. Mm-hmm. But they have a different style. They have a different point of view. And they were never really able to understand. First of all, I don't think they really understood why the NWO worked in the first place.
Right.
And they tried to WWE-ize the NWO, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They tried to WWE-ize Goldberg. They tried to WWE-ize, Scott Steiner. So, you look what they did with the WCW Invasion. That didn't work either. And it didn't work because they weren't willing to let it stand on its own and be its own entity and feel different than the WWE. That's what the fans want. Mm-hmm. But, in fairness to them, they have a very successful formula. They know what works for them. And, they try to apply their style and their formula to something that was inconsistent with what they were used to, and it just didn't work.
Mm-hmm. If I could take you back in time to the angle that you did that has to be considered among the most successful when you, as you put it, rebuilt Sting's career, and you created the Sting character, and you held off for a year and a half on a match that everybody wanted to see. Some people were very disappointed in how that match ended up turning out, and a lot of people say that it was backstage politics that ended up making it turn out the way that it turned out. Were you at all disappointed as the promoter of the match with how the Sting-Hogan match at Starrcade '97 turned out?
Yes, I was, and there's some truth. It's not. There's some truth to the belief that there was, politics involved. Clearly, in every decision that's made, there are a certain degree of politics. But here is the situation, and one of the reasons that I was disappointed. We had spent as much time as we did, spend building that story and creating a picture and building to that moment when Hogan and Sting would finally have this confrontation. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, and I want to go on the record as saying I have a tremendous amount of respect for Steve Borden, aka Sting. Uh-huh. But here's the truth. The truth is, during that period of time that Sting was out of action, just kind of showing up occasionally wearing his dark black robe and, not wrestling in the ring and not having to travel and not being in the house shows and not doing so many of the things that everybody else had to do. He really had a year to get himself ready for that match, for that moment, so that when his character was revealed, if he were to overcome Hogan, that would have been his moment in the sun. And quite honestly, when Sting showed up that day at the arena for the match, I looked at him, and he looked like he hadn't been in a gym in a year. It was the first time that I'd really seen him, without that jacket on and covered up and all that. I mean, he looked like he was the same size I was, and almost about the shape as I was. And he looked like he hadn't seen sun in, the same amount of time. And in my own mind, I questioned his commitment. I questioned how badly he really wanted that opportunity. And quite honestly, I was disappointed. I was disappointed for him. I was disappointed in him a little bit, but I was very disappointed for him because I didn't get the impression right then that he was really taking and seizing this moment for what it could have been. And I wasn't the only one that felt that way. And, when Hogan and I and Steve sat down and we started talking about, how we were going to end that match, I think, in a way, Hogan and I both kind of felt the same thing. That this guy just really wasn't as committed as we thought he would be or should be. And I made the decision I made because I just didn't feel like it was the right moment to put that spotlight on Sting. It was from a storyline point of view, but as a performer, I didn't really get the sense that he was ready, willing, and able to take on the role.
And you last response, you mentioned politics always play a role, and of course, one of the biggest political wars has been Bret Hart in '97. Many felt that bringing Bret to WCW would have been the nail in the coffin for the WWE. But when he came to WCW, why do you think that he didn't make as much of a splash as many thought he would?
There's more than one reason. Part of it is my fault. Clearly, I didn't have a plan that was the right plan to totally, take advantage of everything that Bret was bringing to the table. So I'll take some responsibility for that. I think part of it was also the fact that Bret, and I talk about this in detail in my book, and again, I want to say that, Bret is one of the classiest people I've ever dealt with in the business. And I have not only a lot of respect for him, true affection for Bret. But that said, I think Bret was deflated when he came to WCW. I think the incident in Montreal took a lot out of him. And I don't think he was as committed and passionate about being in WCW as he needed to be to make his presence what it needed to be. So between me not really having the ultimate plan and Bret not being really as passionate as he had been previously about the business, I think it was a combination of those two things and maybe a few more smaller issues that just we never hit on all 8 cylinders. We were constantly misfiring and operating on 6 or 7, but we never really hit on all 8.
All right, now I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but if you had the chance to do it today, would you like to run a wrestling promotion?
Yeah, I do. It's probably one of the questions I get asked most often, and the answer is no. I've been there, I've done it. I've kind of been to the mountaintop in my own mind, at least. Granted, as I said in the book, I didn't camp out on that mountaintop nearly as long as I would have liked to, but I did it, and I took a small wrestling that was struggling, that nobody ever thought would ever be competitive, and I filled it to the largest, most successful wrestling organization on the planet. And in doing so, I changed a lot of things and reinvented the business. It would be hard to live up to that level of success again. And I don't think that I would be satisfied making an effort and an attempt that I knew in my own mind would never be as great as a goal that I had accomplished previously. It would seem kind of anticlimactic. So the answer to that is no. I really have no interest in doing that. And part of it is because I know this is going to sound like I'm kissing butt, because everybody can figure out that I'm still under contract with WWE, although that's coming to an end shortly. I really like the people that I work with. When it was WCW and I didn't know anybody in the WWE and I didn't have any relationships, as I said in the book, They were names I didn't know and faces I wouldn't have recognized. Now I've developed relationships with many of those people, and a lot of them I not only respect them, I like them, and I know their families. And it would be hard for me to muster up the same kind of aggressiveness and kind of take no prisoners mentality that it would take to be competitive with them. And I just don't have a heart for it.
Well, if I can go back to what you just mentioned, you said that's going to be coming to an end soon. Should I assume that maybe doing this book was kind of your farewell to the wrestling business?
It is in a way. It very much is in a way. And it's one of the reasons why, quite honestly, given the opportunity, it would be hard for me to think about competing with the WWE because, quite frankly, as much history and animosity and venom and all the things that people think they understand about Eric Bischoff and Vince McMahon, the fact that, Vince gave me an opportunity to step back into the limelight, to be a performer, to work with some of the biggest names in the business, and to have a legacy that is a lot brighter and that I'm a lot more proud of in some respects than the legacy that I was left with when I left WCW. So for me to be able to kind of end my career on what I consider to be a high note as a performer and as a professional, and to be able to write a book and have my say, I think that's a great way to end a career. And if my career ends tomorrow, I'm very proud of it, and I'm happy the way that it ended. If I extend my career with WWE for some reason and it lasts, a year longer or 5 years longer or whatever, well, that's cool too. But right now, at the end of this moment, I'm very happy, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that Vince gave me to do it this way.
Well, you've been executive producer of a couple projects. One of them that I really enjoyed was the Full Throttle that you did a couple years ago because I'm a big fan of Jackal. I thought that was a great production. Can we expect to see you do more of those things, or are you kind of just going to step on off and have fun doing what you're doing?
No. First of all, I have a daughter that's going to ASU, and a son that I'm continuing to support in his endeavors. So, believe it or not, financially, it's just as important today as it was 15 years ago that I'm out there rocking and socking and making some bread. So I am in no position to retire at this point. Professionally, though, I've got my own business, Bischoff Entertainment. We're also partners in an energy drink company that's based in Scottsdale called Saco, which you can find at all your local convenience stores. I'm in business with Chris Moneymaker in a venture called Moneymaker Gaming. So I've got a lot of other business ventures that I'm involved with. And my partner, Jason Kirby, and I have an entertainment company. We produce reality television. We're currently negotiating a deal with VH1 for a reality series that's going to get announced very soon. So I still have the opportunity to be involved creatively in the world of entertainment. I still have my businesses that I'm able to build, and I'm able to be involved in the business side of things that I enjoy. So whether or not wrestling fits into that or not, I'm still very, very active, and I'll be pursuing those items.
If I can throw you one more wrestling question from me. Vince McMahon said recently on an episode of Bite This that if the fortune had been reversed and WCW would have been the victor in the Monday Night Wars and WWE would have ended up being sold to WCW, he would not have made the transition into an on-air character for WCW. What was your mindset when you decided that you were going to take their offer and appear as the general manager?
It was a lot of what I just described to you previously. It's interesting because Vince, WWE, not Vince, but WWE called me a year before I ever went on board with WWE. They had called me and asked me to come in, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't interested at the time. Part of it was because I just wasn't in shape. I wasn't mentally ready. I wasn't physically ready. Part of it was because I still was carrying a lot of negative baggage around with me, and just didn't really want to be involved in the wrestling business. But another year went by, and you've heard the saying, "Time kind of heals all wounds." So a lot of the resentment and the negative feelings I had about the business in general, because of the way it went down for me personally, those situations were gone. A year kind of took care of all that. So when the WWE called me, in fact, Vince called me himself, a year later, and asked me if I'd be interested in coming in, I thought about this, and I miss performing. I miss getting out, because there's nothing more exciting for me than to get out and stand in the middle of the ring in front of 15 or 20,000 people and have that ability to manipulate that crowd and get them to do exactly what I need them to do. If I need them to scream and yell and cheer, I can get them to do that. If I need them to get so angry at me they want to, hit me in the head with a baseball bat, I can do that. And that as a performer, you learn to its power in a way, and you miss it, and you miss that feedback from the live audience. So when I got the phone call from Vince and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming in, that's what I thought about. And I also thought very much about, like I just said previously, how do I want to end my legacy? Do I want to be the guy that failed at WCW, or do I want to be a guy that comes out and people acknowledge as a good performer, as a true professional, as someone who tries to contribute? And do I want to dispel a lot of the lies and myths, that are about Eric Bischoff in the process? And I chose A, number one, to perform, and B, to end my career the way I wanted to end my career, not the way someone else wanted to end it for me.
It seems that your legacy is very important to you, and I guess it would be important to everybody. As much as you can answer this question, do you think Vince owning all the footage of WCW and having ultimately creative control and final say on what's going to be put on things like the Monday Night Wars DVD and all documentaries that come out hereafter, do you think that is somehow going to lead to maybe a skewing of what actually happened through the years of the Monday Night Wars and when you ran WCW?
Clearly, it already has. I mean, there are people within WWE today that, would just as soon drive a stake through my heart as look at me. And there's not a lot of them, but they're still there. There are people there that remember, because of the things that I did and because of the way we dominated the WWE for as long as we did, there were people there that watched them haul the water coolers out of the offices because they couldn't afford to put the water in them anymore. There are people there that remember not being able to make long-distance phone calls because they couldn't afford to pay their long-distance phone bill because we dominated them so badly. There were people there that laid in bed at night, wondering how they were going to pay their mortgages and feed their families and take care of their kids because of what we were putting them through. And I don't blame them. I mean, I understand how they feel, but they're still carrying that around today. And because of that, I think it's always going to be hard for them to completely acknowledge the impact and the success and the innovation and the credit that we should get for really revitalizing this business. Because if you look at the wrestling industry pre-Nitro, pre-WCW success days, pre-Eric Bischoff, it was just, it was flat. It wasn't exciting. It was really pretty boring stuff. It was animated, cartoony, silly kind of wrestling. And we blew it up, and we grew the audience, and we created a whole new generation and level of fan interest. And to this day, WWE is benefiting from that. I mean, I talk about it a lot in the book. I mean, when you watch Monday Night Raw and compare it to the Monday Night Raw that you saw pre-Nitro, and you tell me who's influenced Monday Night Raw more than Vince McMahon? Probably nobody other than Eric Bischoff.
Well, you talked about the skewing of WCW success. I wanted to ask you, how did you feel about being part of their Ecw Rebirth, where they basically said that ECW was better than WCW?
I mean, look, it's hyperbole. It's promotion. It is what it is. Here's part of my undoing. Okay, and it works both ways. When someone works for me and they make the choice to accept my money, I expect them to give me 100% of their time, effort, and energy professionally. I expect them to support what I want to do and to do it to the best of their ability. And, when you work for me, that's sometimes not always the most comfortable position to be in because I don't compromise much. As long as, we have an understanding where if you choose to take my money, then here's what I expect from you. And I don't vary from that. Now, the flip side of that is, when I'm on the other side of it, and I make the decision to take someone else's money, then I'm perfectly willing and able, and wouldn't have it any other way, I give them 100% of my time, effort, and energy, and I support 100% whatever it is they want to do. That's the choice I make when I decide that I'm going to take your money. So when they came to me and said, here's what we want you to do, it didn't occur to me to do anything other than to give 110% and be as good at it as I could possibly be. That's the way it works.
Do you think they're so surprised that you actually were willing to do a lot of the things you were willing to do?
I think so. You know, one of the first things that Vince asked me when he called me, you know, several years ago to come on board, and I'm sure that he had heard a lot of rumors and a lot of people, you know, filled his head with a bunch of crap about what I was like and what my personality was all about. But one of the first questions Vince asked me, he said, Eric, is there anything that that you're not comfortable doing? And I said, yeah, I'm not comfortable moving to Connecticut, but other than that, I'm wide open. And I think he chuckled because I don't think he believed that I was as serious as I was. But really, other than moving to Connecticut to take the job, there was nothing, that they would ask me to do that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. It's not really Eric Bischoff out there. It's a character.
Right.
It's no different than, Kiefer Sutherland playing the character that he plays in 24. That's not really him. He really wouldn't. I watched an episode the other night where, Kiefer Sutherland had to, shoot a witness and cut his head off. Well, I'm sure Kiefer Sutherland wouldn't really do that in real life, but it's the character, it's the story. And I feel the same way about what I do on television. That's not really Eric Bischoff out there. It's just the character that I play.
Well, stepping back to the book really quickly, and we'll let you off the phone in just a few minutes. Thank you again for your time tonight. The question I have for you, in reading some of the Amazon.com reviews, a lot of the people who are responding to it, they're saying, and I've read the book, and I don't necessarily agree with this, they said that they felt maybe that by the commercials that WWE was putting on, that you would be a little bit more cutthroat in the comments that you said in the book, and they were kind of surprised to see that you were more amiable and more polite to some of the people they didn't really expect you to be. Do you think that people are going in there expecting something that they're not going to think, expecting something that isn't even you?
That's a really good question and a good observation, and I think to a certain degree that might be true. Just the nature of the way first of all, the nature of the title of the book is Controversy Creates Cash. It may imply to some people that the book is loaded full of controversial, content. And that's not the case at all. If you read the book, you know that, Controversy Creates Cash is kind of a premise or a platform that I utilize to help build business. And I talk about the controversial things that I did during that time. But I don't say things that would currently be controversial. One of the things that, when people read wrestling books, every wrestling book that I've read so far, I haven't read any of them cover to cover, but I've read excerpts from many of them. But they're all kind of the same to me where, one wrestler or ex-wrestler is blasting another and they're kind of exposing things that happen in the locker room and they're digging up these old personal issues that nobody really gives a damn about but them. And they're kind of taking shots at each other back and forth. Right. I didn't want to do that book. And I made that clear in the very beginning of the book that that's not what it's about. What I wanted to do is write a book about the business of the wrestling business because no one else has done that. We all know all the history and the backstories and all the politics and gaga that goes on backstage. Who cares? It doesn't matter. But it was important to me that people did understand the business of the wrestling business and appreciate it for the complex, challenging, ever-changing business that it is. And that's the book that I want to read. So, yeah, between the way that the book is being promoted in WWE and between the title of the book, I'm sure there are some who are expecting, these bombshells. And there are some. I go into detail about some things that, people have never heard before that are going to rub some people the wrong way. But that's not the core of the book.
Has you gotten any negative feedback from anybody that you wrote about in the book?
Actually, not negative per se, but a friend of mine, I'll let him remain nameless, but a guy that I've known from day one, who was real close to me in a lot of different ways. I'll drop a couple hints for you. Actually called me and said, "Hey, I heard what you said, and I'm not angry, but geez, couldn't you have said that a little nicer?" and my response was, yes, I probably could have. But then it would really be me. It was important to me to be as honest and subjective as I could be. I admitted, look, this is my book from my point of view, and there's a lot of emotion and things in the book that prevent me from being 100% totally subjective. but that doesn't mean I didn't try to be. And in the course of trying to be subjective, you know, I said things about a lot of people who were close friends of mine that I'm sure I could have said nicer if the book was all about trying to put someone else over. But I didn't try to put myself over, and I didn't try to put my friends over. I tried to be as honest as I could be about everything.
Well, once again, we can't thank you enough for your time. Can we just close out with something we call five names? And basically, it's word associations. If you have a one-word answer, that's cool. And if you want to share a story, we have all the time in the world. And after this, we will let you off the phone. But thank you again for your time this evening.
All right, I'll do that if you let me plug my website, www.ericbischoff.com. Okay, go ahead.
And you'll be happy to know that we did not ask anything about TNA because we've read that website.
Okay, great.
All right, the five names I have: Vern Gagne.
Classic guy. I have a tremendous amount of respect and affection for.
Ted Turner.
Ted Turner.
Yeah. I would cut off a finger on my left hand for an opportunity to go back to work for him.
How about somebody who used to work on our website and still does from time to time? Somebody I'm sure you're not a huge fan of, Missy Hyatt.
Just a disgusting waste of humanity.
Well, here's another interesting one. How about the Honky Tonk Man?
A loser.
And we got two names left, and hopefully they'll be a little bit better. Anybody who says that Eric Bischoff could not create a character, I have two words for them, and that's who's next. How about Goldberg?
Goldberg. Very, very intense. Almost too intense for his own good.
And the last name on the list is a guy you worked with towards the end of WCW, Vince Russo.
Fraud.
Well, once again, we can't thank you enough, Mr. Bischoff. The website is www.ericbischoff.com. The book is Controversy Creates Cash, done through Simon & Schuster Publishing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you can pick that up in newsstands and bookstores everywhere. And once again, thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to say to close this out?
No, just keep enjoying the WWE product and supporting sports entertainment in general. And thanks for the time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Before we hang up, can I ask you for one other little favor?
Sure.
Could you give us a quick station ID? Just saying
sure,
just say the name of the show is the turn. So if you want to say,
we're the Pile Driver.
Oh, the Pile Driver. Never mind. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
We have a couple different shows on the station that are wrestling related, so I'm kind of confused. Anyway, the name of the show is called The Pile Driver.
Hi, this is Eric Bischoff. Controversy Creates Cash, and you're listening to The Pile Driver.
The preceding announcement was paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
On the listen, and if you like what you heard, I'm glad. If you didn't like what you heard, well, go fuck yourself.
Most people done hung up on me.
We had a lovely conversation.
What a show.
Oh, mercy, Daddy.
On your radio dial. Don't hang up. Bye-bye.